Do me a favor. Think about the world we live in, filled with many nations and countries, each with its own distinct culture. All of them so diverse and rich that it's crazy to think that people all over the west side of the globe enjoy stories and experiences made all the way on the Far East. Even without having to go to opposite ends of the world, even on the same massive patch of land, you can easily find many different countries and perspectives. It can also be so overwhelming that, well, makes it difficult to try to understand a culture that is very different from your own. There are so many different aspects to the lifestyle, customs, and traditions in the different places in the world that it's almost a necessity nowadays with globalization to try to find ways to experience as many different cultures as possible. We live in a time and age in which it's impossible to live without the influence of other countries, whether it is through business, profession, or even entertainment. If you would have told little 9-year-old me that besides the video games and cartoons I was so into, which I never really knew came from a country all the way on the other side of the globe called Japan, that I would have an obsession later on in my life with seeing as much of the world as possible and try to learn as much as I could from other cultures, going as far as leaving my home country to live abroad, thus changing my entire perspective of life and how the world works and the people in it are, well, I would have probably run back to my mom scared about the weird person speaking weirdly to me because, you see, back then, little old me didn't really know English all that well. Like, I was so close to failing English all the way through elementary school up to middle school or so. It wasn't really until high school and the advent of YouTube, watching more shows in English than ever, as well as being forced to play video games in it, since back then it was very hard to have games in Latin America that were dubbed in Spanish, that I actually started to be surrounded by English and American culture as well. It was at this point in my life that I can tell you that I legitimately started, in a subconscious level, to learn so much about the language that, well, you can tell I'm at least proficient enough to ask where the bathroom will be located within the premises of any establishment, building, or residence. Even though I still managed to fuck up after close to 25 years of learning English. This also kind of applied to my Japanese, as I believe it's no secret at this point, I am a huge fan of Japanese media, as it has shaped many aspects of my life for sure. So much so that through the, at first, totally amazing and not cringy at all goal of being able to watch anime without subtitles, so I wouldn't have to wait for the subbers to finish their heroic deeds of translating for us non-speakers, I first began taking classes. However, thanks to an amazing sensei that decided to slap some sense into her dumb weeaboo students by showing us more about her country besides, you know, anime, I started having an interest to get to know Japan both through its media and culture, to the point of me effectively moving here 7 years ago and starting a journey that effectively changed me into the man I am today. And well, as you might be able to infer, ある程度日本語を話せるようになった。トイレはどこですか？ぐらいは言える. And it was also through learning these two languages, which I believe are the two languages in which most of the current mainstream media is mostly produced and consumed in the world, with certain exceptions of course, what led me to be able to enjoy many different works such as games, books, series, movies and such, that I started growing more and more curious about other countries' productions and works as well. Helped also by the fact that, thanks to my surroundings, I was blessed with having many friends all over the globe, each of course with their own culture. This, in tandem, led me to the decision of learning 5 languages and at least 1 sign language before expiring from this world. A goal I am well underway with, me currently trying as hard as I can to learn Italian all by myself. However, fairly recently I've started to become fascinated with how language and cultural differences affect things such as game developments, anime, film and series adaptations, and their portrayal of the topic, as well as difference between localizations. So you can think of this video as a small introduction not only to a new series I might have hinted at the end card of my second Genshin Impact video, but also as a way to get to know yours truly a little bit more. Now, what exactly can you expect about these types of videos? Well, for starters, on both my Genshin Saga video and my Valkyria Chronicles review, I left a whole section out on both videos talking about the difference between localizations, the meaning behind Genshin Impact's title, aspects of the culture, and how language even shapes some of the regions and characters, or even on the case of Valkyria Chronicles, how the dub might be a bit more at home for some people based on the type of game it is. And that's just a small part of many different things I would love to cover in this series. Like how there are pieces of media you are enhanced by their localization like Space Dandy or Cowboy Bebop. How a game that was supposed to be impossible to adapt to Western audiences ended up not only being adapted, but did so in one of the most brilliant ways I've ever seen in my life. To even, maybe, ways in which I myself, in the most humble of ways, will improve certain translations and localization of certain pieces of media. And of course there's also the rabbit hole of the fictional languages, or the way fictional culture shapes the experiences even further, as well as how simply being from a different country shapes media in ways we don't normally think or imagine. But I don't want to make this video and just leave you with a promise of things to come, so I rather take you through some of the sections of the videos I mentioned before to give you a taste of what's to come. So let us revisit the wonderful world of Teyvat, ironically way earlier than I would have predicted.
Outlanders, your journey ends here.
Yeah, Paimon really owes you for that. Otherwise, Paimon likely would have drowned. So Paimon will do her best to be a great guy. How are you staying afloat like this with just a wind glider?
I'm preventing your fall with the power of 1,000 winds. Now, concentrate. See yourself grasping the wind. Harness its energy. この天理の頂点者がここで人の子のおごりに終焉を。
あれが七天神像だぞ。神をかたどった像は七神の象徴としてこの大陸に点在してるんだ。
怖がらないで。安心して。僕は帰ってきたよ。
あいつドラゴンと話してる？
At the time of recording, Genshin Impact is dubbed in English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. I will mainly be focusing on the English and Japanese dubs for, well, reasons I already explained. I predominantly play Genshin Impact in Japanese, mainly because the game is, in lack of finer words, anime as fuck. And because of this, it's what will probably feel more natural to a lot of people at first. However, being a game made by Chinese developers with a very predominant Chinese-inspired region, some of the names are changed in the Japanese dub. Characters such as Beidou, Xingzhou, Chichi, and Ningguang are changed to Hokuto, Yukiaki, Nana, and Yoku respectively. This is because the written names in kanji have a different pronunciation between Japanese and Chinese. But this could also be a matter of localization, as the base name for both travelers, either or Sora in Japanese, and Lumine or Hotaru are a different take on the meaning of their English counterparts name in a sense. It is even more interesting when you get into all of the other languages available on the script, as you're able to have the text in even many more languages than the four I mentioned. One example will be Tartaglia, or Tartaglia. This guy, whose nickname changes depending on the language too, as he's child in English, which means the son of a noble man who has not yet attained knighthood. Nobil in Spanish, most likely alluding to the noble root of his name, and Koshi in Japanese, representing by this kanji right here, which can literally be translated to young noble. I find this absolutely interesting because it could have been easy to just give him the nickname child in all languages, but adapting this nickname in all of those different languages shows the effort of the translation team to emphasize this aspect of the character for whatever reason. I mean, I'm sure if I were to know his story, I would have an idea of why, but I didn't roll for him, so at the moment I have no idea. While it is nice that Genshin is available in 4 unique dubs and a lot of other languages for its text, some of the personalities of some of the members of the cast can be seen as somewhat changed depending on what language you choose to play the game in. Take Emergency Food for example. She has this very pixie-esque high-pitched voice in English, going as far as speaking in third person.
Let's move then. The elements in this world responded to your prayers, and Paimon thinks that's a lovely sign.
In Japanese, however, she talks way more normal and has a very different voice range. coming across more as a comedic sidekick from a straight man and stooge Japanese comedy routine rather than a simple sarcastic fairy companion.
よし、じゃあ行くか。この世界の元素はお前の祈りに応えた。いい兆しだとオイラは思うぞ。
It is not that either voice is better than the other, as all of the cast in all of the languages do a fantastic job in bringing these characters to life, albeit with a different flair to it. Another example will be Kaya, who is more stoic and calm in Japanese, while coming across as more suave and cunning in English. One, to me, sounds like someone who is always aware of what's happening and in control of every situation.
You've actually got the power to go up against the dragon. Are you a new ally? Or a new storm?
Whilst the other is more playful and manipulative with a sarcastic tone.
巨竜と戦えるほどの力を持っているとは我々の客人となるか、それとも新たな嵐となるか。
Both really central aspects of his characterization, but simply emphasized differently depending on the dub. This change also comes into play ironically with the title of the game. At one point you will be told that characters with visions are basically people chosen by gods who are closer to godhood than regular humans. These vision wielders are usually referred to as Allogene, but only if you're seeing the English dub of it. As it turns out, in its original dub, at least when it comes to the characters used in the word and in its Japanese dub, they are referred to as Genshin. The way the adaptation of this game was handled is fascinating to me, as having the Japanese dub on while listening to the English subtitles, being someone fluent in both languages, allow me to understand the story by combining these two versions of the same story. Something I can't really say I've had with any game as of late, and made my experience with Genshin an even more unique at that. At some point I would really like to give the Chinese and Korean dub a try too, since I think it will be very interesting to see what type of emotion I can feel from listening to a character speak a language I'm not really proficient at all. But more than anything, the Chinese dub is of particular interest to me. As I mentioned in the review for this game, if you play the PS4 remake of this game, as well as the Steam release, you're gonna have the option of dual audio. Now, before tackling each dub, I have to commend the localization department for an outstanding job in making this game feel natural on its English dub. Even though the Japanese dub is very westernized due to its setting, with people barely using polite suffixes and such, what I like the localization team did is that they didn't really translate directly from what the Japanese dub was saying. That being said, if you do know Japanese to some degree and you play this game with the English subs on while playing with the Japanese dub, you'll notice some information being omitted in one version, or the general nuance of the scene being changed somewhat, but not too harsh that you're gonna say one is trash and the other is just the better one.
Whoa. Already? Hey there, guys. You're beautiful. Starting early this year.
I'm Alicia Melchiot. So, I'm wondering what you've been writing in that little book you've got there. Imperial spies are in the area.
This book is nothing, really. I was just sketching the fish and, you know...
Yes, oh, I know.
Someone's taking this private beach thing a little too literally. It's already hot enough as it is.
Rosie!
Don't try to pretend. You picked the raciest suit just for the lieutenant. The nerve of some girls.
Rosie, you're the one who told me to get it. Okay, someone's going in the water.
Hey, Wilkes.
Oh, Hayes, you having fun?
I am.
Been a while since we've come to the beach, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Whoa! あれはもしかしてやっぱり光りますじゃないか。
私は分隊長のアリシア。最近帝国のスパイがうろついているという情報があって見回りをしてたんだけど。
信じてもらえると嬉しいんだけど、僕は単に魚のスケッチをしていただけで。
魚のスケッチね。
お、
何デレデレしてるんだよ、隊長さん。まったくお熱いことで。ロージー、隊長のためにそんな派手な水着着ちゃってさ、けなげじゃないか。
ロージーが選んだんでしょ。こら待ちなさい。兄さん。
ああ、イサラじゃないか。楽しんでるかい？
はい。
一緒に海に来るのは久しぶりだね。
はい。
Take for example the song I feature on the sound department section of that video, A Love Passed On, which also works really well in both languages. Me personally preferring the Japanese dub in general, but I do feel both dubs work well in their own rights. Both voices are fittingly beautiful and the lyrics feel natural and coherent.
あなたの静かな微笑み、ふるさとから届いたぬくもり、同じ夢をきっと見てた。You stood, always smiling, ever quiet, ever tender, and I, a lost child, always frightened. I remember that you came and found me, blinded by unshed tears.
Just as with Genshin, some of the personalities feel a little bit changed here and there, or their focus is a little bit different, but you can also argue that's true to anyone when they speak in another language, as we all tend to switch our personalities a little bit when we do that, to even the tone of our voices. At the end of the day, it's honestly up to your own preference. Do you prefer something that feels more close to home, with certain characters having a specific accent, or a more natural inflection in how they say certain lines, as well as how they address certain people? Or would you just want to go for the full anime feel? If you happen to give this game a try because of my review, maybe try checking some of the game out in another language. You might find it interesting once you get over the initial weirdness of the sudden change. And once you do, you might be able to enjoy the story in a slightly different way. And with that being said, let's finish with what is arguably my favorite topic as of late, with localization. The Great Ace Attorney is a key example on how you go about making a localization. Just in case you don't know the Ace Attorney series, you're an allegedly ace attorney who has to go about solving cases in a very exaggerated court simulation game where you have to cross-examine witnesses and their testimonies. You interrogate a clown, and an old man with a clown nose, and a fucking parrot. It's a great time, and I'll talk more about this series later on in depth, since it's a treasure trove of adaptation and localization. But I want to focus on one of its spin-off game, The Great Ace Attorney, known officially for a while solely as 大逆転裁判なるほど龍之介の冒険. You see, Ace Attorney is one of those games with a fascinating localization history, having both versions of the game being a semi-parallel world, as the Japanese version of the game clearly takes place in Japan, while the American one does in America. But it has to go through various hoops and ordeals in order to be as natural as possible, which is the reason why there's so many memes about the English version of the game and how it is obviously based in Japan. However, while sadly, the arguably best game in the series never came to the West due to their sales or Capcom feeling like people weren't as interested in it, 大逆転 suffers from an odd problem I don't really see many games suffer from. We all know about development hell, right? But localization hell. Yeah, that's a thing. See, the Great Ace Attorney duology takes place in the Edo period in Japan, with the protagonist of the main series, Phoenix Wright, better known as Naruhodo Ryuichi in Japanese, apparently having an ancestor named Naruhodo Ryunosuke. The game takes place in a period in which the profession of lawyer was fairly new in Japan, and it sees our heroes traveling to London. Now of course, all the characters in the Japanese version of the game speak in Japanese, even the characters that are clearly Westerners. But you have to suspend your disbelief a bit and think they're all talking in English, since there are moments in the game in which Japanese characters appear and the rest of the cast, while being perfectly fluent in Japanese, have no idea what it reads. Sadly, however, The Great Ace Attorney never really saw a release in the West, being originally released on the 3DS in 2015. And for a while it seems we'll never get an official translation, as many Capcom employees kept quoting that there were a number of circumstances that got in the way of them being able to localize the game. If you'd allow me a little bit of speculation, it could either be due to the fact that the game heavily features Sherlock Holmes as one of its main characters, which is a public domain IP and used rather commonly in Japanese media. However, in the West, its use in copyright seems to be a bit of a nightmare, even though it is public domain, which could have been the reason at first, and also why the name changed to Sherlock Holmes in the new English dub. However, my own personal theory was the difficulty that was presented when translating this game, as it is heavily rooted in Japanese, even more so than any other game in the franchise, was a challenge Capcom was probably not prepared to undertake at this point. Not only with the example I gave before with the Japanese characters, but many jokes or lines require to understand Japanese in order for them to actually make sense. More than anything, however, I believe the localization team either didn't have the capacity at the time, or Capcom wanted to gauge if this titanic labor of a localization was even worth it on the first place. And thanks to the massive sales brought by the collection of the first 3 games on the 3DS, Switch, Steam, and PS4, which coincidentally had both the Japanese and English dubs on both the Western and Japanese version, leads me to believe that Capcom realized the potential market this series has. So luckily for all of us fans of the series, the game was localized much to our collective surprise a couple of months ago, which I am sure as hell nobody expected. That being said, not only were we surprised about the fact that the game was going to be localized, which was already sweet enough as it is, but guess what else they did with the game?
I will become a lawyer. I have to.
Susato Mikotoba, judicial assistant to the defense.
Did you catch that? Try one more time.
I will become a lawyer. I have to.
Susato Mikotoba, judicial assistant to the defense.
With the exception of one character, and trust me, it kinda makes sense why, the 2 main leads in the English dub are voiced by Japanese actors with heavy Japanese accents. I cannot even begin to describe how much is going to help the setting of the game to begin with, besides of course giving more exposure to Asian voice actors in the West. But suffice to say, when I decide to tackle this game, this is going to be for sure one of the aspects I see myself falling in love super hard with, as it is not only thematically appropriate, but it helps the concept of a Japanese lawyer migrating to an English-speaking country. And that's only the surface when you see some of the other things shown in the trailers and interviews. Suffice to say, I can already tell this game is going to become my textbook definition of how to actually localize a Japanese-heavy game into the West. And that's only some of the many aspects I would love to tackle in this series. Whether I make a segment on certain videos or make a full episode out of it, I want to take you along in this deep dive of the wonderful world of language and culture media has to offer. I know I only talk about video games on this video, but I do have plans to tackle anime, as well as shows and movies and many more things in the future, so keep an eye out for those as well. And for now, this will be it for this little introduction to Multispeak, the new series of the channel, as well as the closing video for the season 1 of the show. I kinda really wanted to do a bigger video as the season finale, but seeing as how I originally decided to start this channel before Inazuma dropped on Genshin Impact, I kinda ran out of time. But I do promise to have more things in store for you guys for the next season. However, don't believe because the season's over, the channel is going to be dead for a while. Oh no. I have many more surprises in store for you guys. So again, keep a lookout for those further uploads if you're interested in what's to come. And lastly, I want to give all of you who stayed all the way throughout season 1 a massive virtual hug if possible. This little venture of mine has been really quite a ride, and I'm excited to keep on going, as this is only the beginning of what I hope is a long ride on this platform, hopefully bringing you guys smile, laughs, maybe a little bit of knowledge and a new and fresh perspective. But more than anything, thanks for allowing me to have a creative outlet and a place where I can share things that I'm both passionate about and that have shaped me in one way or another. More than subs or view, I just want to share things I love, and even those I don't, with as many people as possible that are open to listening and discussing about it, in a civil manner of course. And in turn, making a space where people can have some respite, talking freely about what they like. For you see, I believe as important as it is to have realism, and heck even a dash of negativity in your life as long as it's balanced of course, I want to be a source of positivity that allows people to have at least something fun and good about their days here and there. Because God knows there's times in which I myself find solace in similar ways in this platform, so why not try to give back by being exactly that? A source of entertainment and positivity. But anyways, I think I'll leave it here for now. Everyone, thank you so much for watching this video and the entire season, and if you haven't, go back and check them. You might even find it amusing the little journey I went to with the quality of my videos and the many things I learned throughout the way. And heck, you might end up enjoying what you see. But for now, it seems this is going to be our to be continued. Thank you all so much for watching. I think I love you all already. Jana.